Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another show of It Matters with me, your host, Zikri Khalil, all the way here from beautiful Georgetown, Pulau Pinang, Malaysia, the island where everybody comes here to eat. And this is where I am at the moment. But even though we're always busy and tired up with work, with lots of traveling time now that we can all travel safely following our standard of procedure during this COVID moment, it does not give me any excuse to keep going in what we do best, and that is to always bring the best of the best humans on this planet solving real world problems and trying to simplify life. And today, it's a special day because we have another guest that is currently online waiting outside of this virtual studio, all the way from New York, I guess, in the USA. I'd like to bring upon Professor Dr. Christian Busch, who's the director of the Global Economy Program over at NYU in New York. Not only that, he's also an author of the book called Serendipity Mindset, which I hope he could enlighten us today, and many other hats that he's wearing right now. The co-founder of Leaders on Purpose, which is a very convenient organization focusing on high impact leaders, and many, many more. So, welcome, Doctor, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Likewise, likewise. It is such a pleasure to have you here. I'm going to go straight into the heat of this show, which is not really that hot, anyways. It's more about trying to, get you squeeze the juice out. What is the focus that you're so passionate about in solving real problems at the moment that you really feel and that you really believe there should be a focus on solving this problem?
Yeah, well, it's a great question because I've been on a search for meaning for quite some time. I used to be that kid in high school. I was kicked out of high school. I had to repeat a year. Probably considered a problem teenager at that point, and then transferred this into my driving style. Probably held the unofficial world record of how many dustbins and trash cans you can knock over on your way to school. And then one day I wasn't so lucky anymore, and I crashed into four parked cars, and all the cars were completely destroyed, including my own. And I won't forget the policeman who came to the scene, and he was like, "Oh my God, he's still alive." And this idea that I was supposed to be dead, that I was supposed to not be here anymore, like made me ask all these weird questions. If I would have died, who would have come to my funeral? Who would have actually cared? Was it all worth it? Is there any meaning in this? And I had only depressing answers at that point. And so I started reading this amazing book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which is all about how do we find meaning in crises. And what I realized, what I enjoy doing the most is connecting people, connecting ideas. And you mentioned I've been entrepreneur, social entrepreneur, and later in academia. And what I found fascinating is that when you look at people who are purpose-driven, successful, inspiring, they have something in common, which is they see something the unexpected and they turn that into positive unexpected outcomes. They cultivate serendipity. And what I found fascinating, I grew up, we talked about this earlier, in Germany, where people tell you can plan things out, you can map things, and then life happens and like everything's, oh my God, like why couldn't I plan for this and this and this? And so what I became really excited about is that question of what can we learn from people around the world on how we can cultivate that serendipity mindset that helps us to turn the unexpected, to turn uncertainty from a threat into an ally, and to really live a kind of more meaningful, purposeful life that allows us to, see something in the unexpected and turn it into positive outcomes.
Oh, that's. I mean, this is definitely a focus of many people who haven't had the opportunity to find authors like you that could literally talk more about this openly. And as you mentioned, you were raised in Germany. I'm sure the philosophy of being raised as a German it's quite popularly known on planning, especially on the operation side. So it doesn't sometimes fit in our way of thinking that there is a way for people in Germany or people in Europe or wherever in that part of the world to think more in this aspect where you're preaching on finding, like you said, how do I find the meaning of coming out from a crisis to turn it into something that would get you to come out and connect the dots so that you can see a different pathway through a more opportunity in uncertainty moments. Thus, I was hoping you could share some examples from some of the people that you may have interviewed that could be more relevant and relatable to all of us who are watching this in your formula that you have, because you anchor a lot of science, and that's what I'm personally interested in. How do you do that? Because people think it's all about luck. You can't quantify luck using scientific methods. Perhaps you have the answer, Dr. Christian, on that sense, to sort of preach on that.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question, right? And maybe to start, a couple of examples and then a couple of practices that I found really useful. In terms of examples, some examples are about how do we make accidents meaningful, right? Serendipity is a lot about meaningful accidents. I mean, when you think about when COVID happened, for example, we had breweries in Cambodia who realized, oh my God, like our customers, restaurants don't buy from us anymore because they went bankrupt. But could we maybe use our hand sanitizer? Could we use our alcohol to produce hand sanitizer? And so what they did is they saw in the unexpected an opportunity to take the same thing they were good at and apply it completely differently. And that's also, how things like Viagra evolved, right? A couple of decades ago, you have researchers who gave people medication against angina, and they realized that there was some kind of movement happening in male participants' trousers. And instead of saying, oh my God, this is embarrassing, let's ignore it, they did the opposite. They said, you know what? That's the unexpected, but in terms of maybe there's something in there, and maybe we can develop a kind of medication around this, and Viagra evolved coincidentally. And one of my favorite examples actually is that serendipity is not only about crises or moments like this, but it's also about, it's such a big part of our life and of innovations, right? So think about something like and even love of your life, right? How maybe you met the love of your life. I mean, imagine the situation, you're in a coffee shop, right? And you spill coffee. Like if you have erratic hand movements like I do, you spill coffee, right? So imagine you spill coffee over someone, and that person looks at you a bit angry, but you sense there might be something there. You don't know what it is. You just sense there might be something there. Now you have two options, right? Option number one is you just say, I'm so sorry, here's a napkin. You walk outside and you think, what could have happened had I spoken with a person? And option two, you start a conversation and that person becomes, the love of your life, your co-founder, your partner, you name it. The point is that our reaction to the unexpected, what we do with this unexpected moment, defines how it all plays out. And so that's what I'm really curious about. How do we learn how to see that in the unexpected? But also, and I think where it gets really interesting here is the question of how do we create more meaningful accidents that can be really positive? And so to give you an example here is, my favorite practice is the hook strategy. And the hook strategy is about saying, we all get asked this question all the time, what do you do, right? That question that puts you somewhere in the box. And there's an amazing entrepreneur in London, Ollie Barrett. If you would ask him that question, he would not just say, I'm a technology entrepreneur. He would say, I'm a technology entrepreneur, recently started reading into the philosophy of science, but what I'm really excited about is playing the piano. What he's doing here is he's giving you three potential hooks where you could be like, oh my God, such a coincidence. I am hosting piano matinees. You should stop by. Oh my God, such a coincidence. My sister is teaching on the philosophy of science. You should become a guest speaker there. The point is that I'm a big fan of writing down what are the areas we're interested in. What are the kind of things that we would like to build into conversations? And then using every conversation to seed it a little bit in there, because you never know where someone would be like, oh my God, such a coincidence. I didn't even know you were interested in this. Let me introduce you to someone. And that's how people get client leads. That's how people get their next speaking gig, you name it.
So it's not just about focusing on the ultimate of serendipity in the sense of its name, but there are more to I would say skill sets that it comes with it, because how you connect the dots, like this hook strategy, you just simplified for us to understand. I mean, I didn't know it, so this is a way of calling it. But I think subconsciously, some of us have done it. But I think if we are aware of that, this is a way of trying to have a deeper connection at a moment where you have maybe 10 or 5 or 2 minutes to to make that connection. This is definitely very, very useful. I believe it can be used as a way of teaching to younger kids, because a lot of us children are more plugged in on our phones these days rather than interacting with real human being. Is that something? Is that something they also looking into, trying to see how some of the useful frameworks from your book and from your studies can be immediately applied on in school levels or even universities? And is that something that also that you want to work on, or maybe it's a secret? I don't know. I'm just trying to squeeze, as I said.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love the question, because I think a lot of my work is, with organizations and bringing that into training programs and so on. But my heart is very much in the question of how do we take that into curricula? So it's being taught at universities, LSE, NYU, and other universities, but also high schools, right? And especially high schools, because that's the phase where, you discover like who you are, who you could be, right? You discover your passions professionally. You try to figure out who you are in the world. And I'm a big fan actually of a lot of kind of different strategies there we can do to have more serendipity happen. Everything from, how do you, in a kind of safe way, ideally copying in, the parents in some way, or at least the teacher or so, but like, approaching inspiring people on LinkedIn or other platforms and saying, hey, been super inspired by you. Like, I would love to explore what's out there. And a lot of times, actually, it's fascinating when you write 10 people a kind of open message and tell them how inspired you were by them. 2 or 3 get back and said, oh my God, you know what? Like, this is great. Like, I'm currently like mentoring people. Shall I mentor you? Whatever it is, doesn't matter. The point is that the more we place bets, the more we reach out to people, the more we somehow engage with people in some way, and don't assume that we don't have anything to offer. Because I think we always assume that we have to have something to offer, right? When I'm a 16-year-old kid, I don't necessarily have a lot to offer, I think, right? In terms of like, I assume I don't have a lot to offer, but actually you do. You have new ideas, you have a new perspective. And when you have a 60-year-old CEO, they are grateful for a new perspective. They're grateful to be part of your journey. So I'm a big fan of kind of taking different types of strategies into the curriculum, but not only in terms of the tactics, right? I think one thing is tactics. I had a high school a student recently who used one of these strategies and then got an internship at a really cool company by doing some of these things. But I think the more interesting thing also is the underlying deeper psychological work that we all have to do. And that starts early on in high school, which is really about saying, I'm a big fan of really writing down. You mentioned, right, that a lot of us intuitively do some of these things. I'm a big fan of doing a serendipity journal and writing down, what are the moments where there was some kind of serendipity that could have happened, and it did, right? So maybe you were in a meeting, being that in a high school, being that in a company, being that at home, and you had this idea, but you didn't raise it. You didn't talk about it because something held you back. And really reflecting on, why is it that I held myself back there, even though I saw something, or in the coffee shop, right? That moment. Why is it? And really diving deeper. Is it imposter syndrome? Is it fear of rejection? Is it, all these different fears that we all have to some degree, right? But that then we can work on once we know that this is what holds us back. But also the reverse, to your point, if we know that we do some things where serendipity happens, how can we do more of this? Because that is the most authentic way of how you can do it in your own life. Because, there's no one size fits it all. It's about contextualizing it to one's own life. So yes, to your answer, big fan of bringing it to the curricula, but also then scaling it up and really saying, we have to have this in psychology sessions. We have to have this in high schools, you name it.
That's I mean, I'm really up for this. You're just getting me a bit excited to see more smart strategies to amplify the experience of our younger students in high schools or even primary school, to look at other means on trying to interact. This is another level. Like, this is like communication level 9,000, the way I see it. If you are able to understand and comprehend. And I'm pretty much grateful to actually learn that everyone knows the meaning of serendipity. We hear it in music, we hear it in people's poetry, but not in this scale of how far and how deep does it go on a psychological level, like you just mentioned, and how it adds more benefits. I believe even though right now I think maybe it's in English translation, but for a lot of those who are stuck the way how I see it, this could be the next the secret book. The book called The Secret. Where everyone starts talking about manifestation, but this one is more practical the way I see it, because you could definitely use it, especially anyone around the planet, to pretty much get where they need to. And again, it's backed by science, which I love. Anything for science. So at this moment, Dr. Christian, is there anything that you're looking for in terms of what's next for you? Like you have this book out already, which we will share the link here so everybody can have a look and check out more about who you are. And, we will definitely share this with our subscribers and our followers also. But for your side, on your side, like what's the next thing that you are going to focus on since this book is out? Is there a big project that ties to the book itself? Is there some exciting partnership that you are building around the book that you could somewhat even talk at the COP26, which is happening right now, or in the next World Economic Forum? What's next for you, Doctor?
Yeah. Well, look, the commitment is to, I've seen this approach work in so many different contexts. And so it's really saying, how do we take this to as many people as possible so that we can really kind of like have a movement going on around this? Because look, I've had psychologists reach out saying, my God, this helps me with my patients to decrease anxiety. I've had parents of autistic kids reaching out and say, this is a way for me to meaningfully connect with my kids, because I'm seeing now there could be some meaning in this crisis moment when they have to now stay at home because they can't send them to school because of COVID and things like this. And so I've seen it work in so many different contexts that I'm mostly looking for, how do we have people in different areas who are taking this mindset into their curriculum, into their organizations, into their families, into their parenting, and really kind of apply it. And so I'm very excited about saying, how do we scale this to, as many places as we can? And to your point, in a world where we face those intractable societal, environmental questions, it's also a major way for organizations to really tackle these big issues, because, we can't plan out a lot of things like, a community solution. You have to iterate around solutions a lot. So you need that mindset to actually make the best out of working together with different partners and so on. So most kind of my life over the next years will be committed to and focused on how do we take this content and take it into as many places as possible. And so, if you're listening and hearing this, please do reach out, being at Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you are, in terms of if you really want to kind of take that on and run with it. Because again, I think it's to our earlier conversation, right? I think life can be extremely short, right? You can run in front of a car tomorrow morning and life is over, right? And I'm very much driven by this idea. How can I do as much as I can today so that if I run in front of a car tomorrow, it was worth it? And so if I can inspire others to do the same and with this content and really run with it, that I feel is my life's purpose at this point.
I mean, the way you say it's beautiful, it's pretty beautiful, because we have a similar saying in this country. That death is the space between your foot and the ground you step on. So make the best of your day. It's the only thing you can't quantify, right? Just like you said. And I really believe in that. And I think this is another aspect you sort of instill in your mindset to kind of really get yourself to be more gung-ho on the day that you're working on. One thing, what you mentioned also about how you want to scale this, it reminds me a lot of one of the books that was so popular 10 years ago called The Blue Ocean Strategy, where everybody, I think a lot of government used this book as a way of sort of trying to transform their governance in that sense, even in this country at one point. And I definitely see this as a new wave of more about mindset, because I think all of us have been a bit idle due to the pandemic. I mean, I can see it here, lots of people who haven't been driving in a long time. You can see how they're affected on the road. But I really, really believe that, we would love to help you and see if there's any possible anchor in this part of the world, because, we cover Southeast Asia. And I love it if there's a school, even international schools, who could just look into your work and have that focus, because this is all about mindset. We all can learn about facts and formulas, but mindset is what keeps the human chain evolving and in simplifying the way how you want to have a simple, good life. translated. And actually, I love to buy the book. So I will definitely go to your website. If that's the place to go and order your book. Is there something you would like to say? Any last message? Any messages you want to tell everybody? Since time flies when we're having fun. To our viewers over here, anything that you like to incite positivity in any way from the book or from yourself? Is there anything you wanted to say, Dr. Christian?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. I mean, and I'd of course love to continue that conversation. I absolutely agree with you. I think the most interesting area of application for this content actually is also in resource constrained settings, right? A lot of my work has been in parts of Sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Asia, part of Latin America, especially also in areas that are relatively low income. And I've seen this work in across different contexts. And so I've been fascinated by that question of how do you essentially make the best out of what is at hand. And by doing this, actually, you allow people locally to create their own luck. And by doing this, you give dignity and hope. And I think that to me is at the core of this, that yes, this is great for me sitting here in the West Village in New York, and I have, access to education networks, but in a context where people don't have that access, how do you kind of, in a way, work on structures? And at the same time, how do you kind of scale that approach that really kind of can elevate people's dignity locally, and especially when partners take it on. So I'm very excited about this, and it comes back to, my kind of favorite quote, I wouldn't be the German philosopher I know I am at heart, leaving without that, which is, Goethe had this beautiful idea that if you take someone as they are, you make them worse. But if you take them as who they could be, you make them capable of becoming who they can be. And that's what serendipity is about. Serendipity is about potentiality. It's about what could be in a person. It's about looking at a former drug dealer and seeing a potential teacher. It's about looking at an old garage and seeing a potential training center. It's about connecting the dots slightly differently to see the potentiality in any moment. And so I think my kind of takeaway message really goes back to Viktor Frankl, who was very inspired by Goethe, and really saying, he was in a concentration camp, which you can imagine is the toughest of situations. It's a situation where you're relatively sure that you will die any moment. And he said, what? This is an extremely meaningless situation, but I will create some meaning in this situation still. So tomorrow I will talk to a fellow prisoner and make them feel better. And by doing this, I now have a reason, a meaning to wake up tomorrow. And I will do that every day until I'm getting out of this. And so the idea now is that we can create our meaning in our life by seeing some kind of potentiality in moments and really imbuing that. And so, his kind of idea was always, we cannot choose our situation. We cannot always choose the situation we're in, but we can always choose our response to it. And that's where our dignity lies, our freedom, and our serendipity.
Fantastic, man. Fantastic. I mean, everything, you're just woken me up. I'm not really a morning person, but just having this conversation, I'm just getting, tons and tons of, notes, trying to connect the dots in my mind on having a much more meaningful life for today. But like I said, Dr. Christie, it's time flies when we're having too much fun. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. I wish we had more time. But due to the format of our show, we would like to keep it short, simple. But nevertheless, we will definitely share your message. We would love to have more people to go find out more about your book. If there's any way that we can do more for you, please let me know. We are in contact on email and LinkedIn. For those who want to find out more about our special guest today, Dr. Christian Busch, you can definitely find out more. Follow him on Twitter, which is I believe it's Christian. Is it Christian or?
Ed Christian.
Yeah, exactly. Follow his book on Facebook on Serendipity Mindset. Hashtag this show as much as you can. We also had already shared you a link where you can buy his book from the main publisher's website. So just go here. And again, it's such an honor to have you, and I would love to have you here in Malaysia when the pandemic has gotten, much more on the lower gaze. I'd love to have you here. And thank you again for your time, Dr. Christian. And let's be in touch. Wishing you all the best and stay epic.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure, and looking forward to keeping in touch. Thank you. Goodbye.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Cheers.